Few days ago was April 1st, April Fool's Day. Most people welcome the laughs while some don't want them. Understandably, in this time, some people are not in the mood for jokes. Some people want relief from the constant bad news and creeping dystopia the world is facing. Or we may be already in a dystopian society. Yes, you heard me, dystopia. This is not a strange time, or weird, or crazy, uncertain, difficult, frightening, tough, or scary times like so many people are actually minimizing, dismissing, or putting spin on things under a Pollyannish lens. What we are facing is a dystopian hellworld. We are specifically living in a prequel and an average dystopian novel or movie that Americans love to lap up in this past decade. The global pandemic is the worst pandemic. The 2019 pandemic, the global pandemic, is the worst pandemic that has hit the United States since the Spanish flu of 1919. It's a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic that is bringing catastrophic effects on society, on the medical field, and socio-economically. With all the states of emergencies across the world and in the United States with the individual states, dystopian vocabulary telling people to practice social distancing, is causing stores to close down voluntarily, or in a good portion of states, close down temporarily or for good. This means restaurants, retail stores, small museums, large museums, and basically almost every store, every place of entertainment is closed for at least a month or two. This has already caused catastrophic events in the consumer economy that will be worse day by day, week by week, and month by month as this pandemic goes on. It is a social and economic catastrophe, if I must explain it to you. Already the Canaries are dropping dead. It began with E3, a major video game conference was forced to cancel the event and push it to next year in 2021. Then the sporting events such as the XFL, NBA, MLB, and the 2020 Tokyo Olympics being pushed back to a later date in around September or to 2021, leaving NBC, ESPN with no idea what to fill in the duration. Then the anime and fandom conventions such as Anime Central and AwesomeCon in DC and WonderCon in California either pushed back to a later date or cancelled until next year. Then the schools and universities and the retailers and restaurants, universities and colleges have been closed and are directing people to online coursework and distance learning procedures for the remainder of the semester, leaving college town stores, restaurants, retails, and other businesses that get revenue from consumers from the teacher community, staff, and students out of revenue and sales. Especially in College Park, Maryland, which is one of many towns that will face financial devastation from this pandemic. Especially Big Planet Comics, which is the local comic shop I attend every chance I get every time I visit the town. And it's the closest bookstore for comics and manga because the closest bookstore where I'm at is very far away from where I live. The closest bookshop that's in public transit distance through Metro Rail is Tyson's Corner or Bowie. All of this has caused millions and possibly billions of dollars of revenue and income lost from the people and companies and retailers and the restaurants that depend on the income coming in from the attendees of the fan conventions, sports events, colleges, universities, and social events. This has caused job losses in the tourism, casino, retail, and various businesses in the retail and restaurant sector and in the service sector. This in turn causes the loss of revenue that translate to loss of potential sales taxes and company taxes from the state and local levels, leading the states and counties implementing austerity measures in the future that will affect regular people even harder, which I will get into that later. Locally, the DC Cherry Blossom Festival, which has been cancelled this entire year, but it didn't stop people, even though in a population even though the attendees of the festival that come for the cherry blossoms at the Tyler Basin was a lot fewer than previous years from going to the Tyler Basin. This is by Metro Rail slash Ramada in an effort to prevent what is left from going to the Tyler Basin to close the Smithsonian Station, which merely just split up the potential crowd into going there from other stations. Oh, and did I mention that all the con shops are going to be good as dead after this pandemic is over? Right now, the comic book industry is burning to the ground with a shutdown of diamond distributors due to various stay-at-home orders in various states, and Marvel and DC being tone deaf instead of actually supporting the industry. As for your local movie theaters, due to major movies that are already completed and get shoved into an unprecedented full year, specifically The Fast and Furious 9, plus additional movies get postponed, it's most likely that your local movie theaters will not survive. If they still exist, only the big chains will survive, and they will only offer tentpole superhero films and Disney films. This pandemic also, the effects of the pandemic goes for many small businesses in the United States. Most consumers and politicians do not realize that many of these businesses live month to month, and a great portion of them will not be able to pay rent due to the states of emergencies. And if these states of emergencies go longer than expected without rent relief or a moratorium of rent or mortgages, most of these businesses will not be able to pay the rent or mortgage, which means they will all be shut for good. What will be left out of these months of states of emergencies during the pandemic are either chain stores or large retail, specifically Amazon, Target, Walmart, and Costco. And Amazon will dominate the retail landscape because a lot of retail stores and small business sector after this pandemic will die. Already, Amazon is buying more businesses to take advantage of the situation. And in the job market, and all those jobs that are in the job market now, they may not be coming back. Corporations are already using this as a way to automate jobs they can find or export or permanent temp jobs away or import migrants for cheap labor through the alphabet soup of visas such as H-1B, H-2B, or so on. And companies will not hire for months despite collecting resumes and posting jobs automatically through Indeed or Dice. And retail will be dominated again by Amazon. And at the same time, the service industry, at the same time, there are people who are constantly berating others to stay home when they have no choice but to go to jobs because their labor is essential, but disposable and expandable by their employers at the service sector, such as for supermarkets, pharmacies, and other businesses, especially GameStop, which have been screwing around with their employers while their own business is dying. With people embracing the dystopian society of social distancing, mental health incidents and suicide incidents will jack up. Mentally ill people losing their access to support systems, or the support systems simply disappearing into thin air in this crisis, especially for the elderly and the autistic and the developmentally disabled. Individuals and families committing suicide because they can no longer afford their mortgages or can't afford to live anymore, and they know they can't get any help from the state government or county government because our social safety nets have been underfunded from the last recession and have never been restored to pre-2007-2008 levels. And the mental health and suicide prevention organizations are not prepared or equipped for this. We already have people ending their lives because they cannot fathom being homeless. And again, that the suicide prevention charities are not prepared for this. And all the suicide hotlines are all staffed with volunteers, not experts, because the expert professionals have been placed with volunteers since the 2008 recession, and they've never restored it. And as for the people directly affected by this pandemic, a lot of them may never see their friends for a long time. They won't be able to experience prom or graduation, and a lot of them won't be able to look forward to anything, such as events, conventions, concerts, movies. Feelings will be out of their control in the near future. All their interactions will be by screen to screen, a literal dystopian nightmare. This is more affecting, it's going more affecting socially alienated in the world, and introverts as well. This is specifically more so for Generation Z because they will bear the brunt. I'm talking about Generation Z, Generation Z. I'm talking about Generation Z because they will bear the brunt of the decimated job market, destroyed social culture to online relations. Basically, they're going to be interacting instead of face-to-face. They're going to be interacting through apps. And this app culture it's going to be turmoil, as in, it's the only way to interact with people. And those who don't have any social currency to lend them jobs or relationships or basically do anything that would get them ahead of this rat race, they will be getting the same crappy advice we as millennials have gotten by those who have their minds stuck in the pre-2008, 2007 era. Now, what about the safety net? The safety net, which has been partly underfunded and mostly dedicated for women and children, not for single able-bodied males, single able-bodied men and women, will not handle this load, leaving a lot of single able-bodied men and women left out and on the streets once the mortgage rent foreclosure moratoriums end on May 1st in most states. Especially, unemployment rates have jacked up to an unprecedented level of 10 million Americans. In some cases, 33 million Americans. And the Trump administration actually asked states not to report the rates because it will shatter Donald Trump's booming economy narrative and his chances for re-election. Unemployment insurance websites that are handled by the state governments are being slammed with people applying for money for unemployment benefits, and there are many people who are still waiting to get on unemployment, such as gig workers, independent contractors, part-time workers, and long-term unemployed, who are still waiting to get on the system because their systems have not been set up yet to handle this load, or the new workers that are trying to take advantage of the new law signed by Congress known as the CARES Act. Now, regarding the safety net and other state-level government programs, state governments will implement brutal austerity budgets that will cause a death spiral, an unrecoverable death spiral that will accelerate the social and economic collapse of the United States. And private charities and non-profit charities will not be able to cope, and everyone who had jobs will be forced to turn to the black economy or life of crime to get by, to make ends meet. And while people are forced to embrace this dystopian society, this pandemic reveals that many people who are not taking this seriously are socially narcissistic extroverts who willfully ignore government advice and orders to stay home as much as possible, with people still pretending that this is a vacation with cookouts, house parties, going to the beach, and other bullshit. It's primarily because people have various biases of delusion, denial, optimism bias, enormously bias, and just war bias that allows them to refuse to take this seriously. Since many people are extroverts, and extroverts need their dopamine hit of seeing other people, and these said people take their lives and their liberties and freedom for granted because they think it's just the flu blow, even though how this pandemic is going on, the actual condition is spreading much rapidly than the flu. These are the same people that say there's a booming economy because they think Wall Street and Main Street are one and the same, and they ignore the sub-minimum wage gig economy. And the minimum wage low wage jobs is what is driving this booming economy. Especially in Florida, where many areas refuse to close their beaches because more economy. Well, there won't be an economy if your consumers croak and die, especially as your essential workers are working to keep what's left of the economy afloat, risking their lives being contracted of this virus, and thus ungrateful for the people who keep our hospitals, our supply chain, our food and medicine on the shelves. And corporations and politicians just constantly give out platitudes, but see the frontline workers as disposable and expandable. And already these corporations and politicians are pushing for all of us to get back to work after Easter, until the Trump administration got pressured to push that date to April 30th. Despite this, corporations, politicians, and neoliberal wonks want all of us to commit social suicide, and neoliberals in particular want to commit social murder to get Wall Street back up and running. Basically, they want to sacrifice old people to get Wall Street back in it. They want to sacrifice all of us to get Wall Street back up again. Especially Glenn Beck. He's been pushing for the economy to get back and running. When I mean the economy, I mean Wall Street. This pandemic is revealing a lot of people who are truly ghouls and wretches inside. And these same ghouls and wretches, if they got their way after April 15th or the state of emergencies that has lifted, they'll force all the people back to work. And then a week or two later, we're all going to have more people infected with this condition, and then later die, and this cycle of state of emergency, lifting in state of emergency, more people get sick and die, will repeat itself over and over and over. These same people are not taking the after effects of this crisis, and they're actually minimizing, dismissing, placating, and denying that this country is facing an economic collapse. Many Americans have no clue or are in total denial that we are heading towards another depression that will be much worse than the Great Depression, and possibly an economic collapse in dystopia for years. An economic collapse looming in the very near future, and dystopia that will prevent any sort of recovery. That will devolve the United States into a dystopian, bureaucratic, social, economic hellworld that will make the country of Panem from the Hunger Games and Night City from the Cyberpunk series look like a paradise. We already have canaries that are already dead or dying, that the American people and our politicians are willfully ignoring. Sooner or later, within the next few months, or even 4 weeks from now, we're going to be having massive evictions of commercial and residential tenants resulting from the inability to pay rent. Even though many states have foreclosure and eviction moratoriums, there is no rent or mortgage moratoriums. This creates the potential of mass unemployment and poverty and homelessness, and widespread small business closures after the evictions begin. This means the first mass evictions that will happen as a result of this will be the end of American society as we know it, and the civil unrest and riots alone will be catastrophic. Many people, and the second canary, is that many people will go into medical bankruptcy because of extended hospital stays due to the pandemic, and the testing might be free, but the various procedures are not to treat this condition. The third canary is that 3.3 million people filed for unemployment benefits the first week that the shutdowns of businesses have begun. The temporary shutdowns of businesses has begun. And the more people unemployed, the less they will spend on non-necessities and luxuries, which will heavily damage retail and the consumer economy, because 70% of our economy is buying consumer goods. It's us buying consumer goods. The fourth canary is with a lot of people that cannot look forward to things because of the pandemic, such as sports, TV shows, events, concerts, movies, video games, when you take away all the services and the people cannot afford the basics because mass unemployment and poverty, guess what happens next? Civil unrest. And with the United States being number one in gun ownership and all the gun shops being sold out of firearms during this pandemic, it will lead to what the Jewish media, an Australian YouTube channel, will call a Munted Shitshow. Looting, rioting, shootings, racial and geographic divisions in this country will explode to full-fledged violence and possible civil war. And finally, the United States President will eventually enact a national state of emergency. And state governments will extend their states of emergencies for an indefinite period of time. This will bring the end of democracy, the end of democratic governments, the end of our economy as we know it, because we already have laws that weaken the Constitution, such as the Patriot Act, which the federal government will entirely use to suppress the civil unrest. It will make totalitarian regimes, such as one in Panem and Cyberpunk settings, such as Night City in Cyberpunk 2020, look like a paradise. And dystopia, our current dystopia, has been so normalized in almost the American populace through movies, novels, and video games that the American populace will not fight against it because, to paraphrase the author of capitalist realism, Mark Fisher, for many people, it's easier to imagine a dystopian future than to imagine a post-neoliberal society. The people that will be also most affected by this are the struggling poor in the South and the Midwest that voted for Trump in huge numbers. And despite this, their socio-economic situation has barely changed. The Canaries are dying, and we as a society and our governments and our politicians are ignoring them. Bernie Sanders, current Democratic candidate for president, and former Republican presidential candidate Joe Walsh, has actually advocated for emergency basic income, basically giving every American over 18, if people are willing to stay at home for months at a time, will pay them at least $2,000 a month. And children should get $1,000 a month. This will allow people to spend on necessities or anything they want, and allow businesses to continue serving customers and goods through either curbside drop-off or delivery, or through mail delivery. There are 206 million adults that are working or used to be working. A $2,000 UBI a month will cost Congress, will cost the taxpayers $406 billion a month, which is a small price to pay to prevent total economic and social collapse. No subsidies, no means testing. Any proposal has to include a rent and mortgage freeze and loan freeze for 3 to 6 months. Because without a rent or mortgage freeze, the real estate industry and the finance industry will see the UBI as a bailout of their own. But how are we going to pay for it? We soak the rich. When Donald Trump ran for the Reform Party in the 1990s, he wanted to impose a one-time 14.5% tax on the billionaires and millionaires to get rid of the U.S. deficit at the time. This time we can use his idea to fund the emergency UBI program, or we can legislate the Federal Reserve to print $1 trillion to fund this recovery. Because they're giving out the same amount of money to prop up the finance industry and real estate industry, also known as the fire industry. And we can use the same amount to bail out the American people instead. With UBI, aka Universal Basic Income, consumers and consumers alone will have the dollars to decide which industry during this pandemic deserves a bailout, not Congress. But Congress drove their feet, fucked around, and has decided a $2 trillion package, which is about 75% of the funds is a bailout for corporations, and for Congress to pad more money while fucking around, because most congressmen, according to Libertarian Republican Joe Walsh, lack imagination to deal with this crisis. The average person just gets $1,200, which is more like minimum wage for a month. But if you are eligible for unemployment insurance, if you can get your claim process, you get $600 on top of the standard benefits per state per week. In 4 months, if you can get unemployment insurance, if you can get through to their unemployment insurance phone lines, or if their websites don't glitch out on you. And already the people who got the bailouts are already doing layoffs, such as United Airlines and the National Canadian Center for the Arts and Performances. And companies like United Airlines blew their Trump tax cut gains on stock buybacks instead of investing in their employees or reinvesting the tax cut money they got into strengthening their businesses. And turns out during this pandemic, only the Trump administration only cared about Wall Street and his buddies instead of Main Street. After Congress passed the act, which is known as the CARES Act, and because Congress fucked around for the most part, except for Bernie Sanders, the entire Congress left for Easter vacation after this time of publishing this video. And there's a good chance we're going to have what the juice media said a munted shitshow. What Congress should have done and can do when they return home from Easter vacation is to basically just approve a $2 trillion package. A $2 trillion package, a standalone package giving every American $2,000 a month or a $30,000 lump sum for 1 year. And let consumers buy whether they need or want while being locked down in their houses. And again, this will allow them to decide which companies will survive or die. Companies that really want a bailout should have to work for that money if they're really desperate for that money to survive. A standalone bill of $2,000 per adult person with $1,000 per child per month for rent or mortgage moratorium for 6 months. A universal basic income bill, an emergency universal basic income bill that should last at least 1 year on a trial basis. And if that works, and it does work, we should make it permanent for all American residents in the event that we have another pandemic. At the same time, the entire nation should be able to shut down for at least a month or two, at least until May 31st, to make this effective. To make sure everyone gets home and stays home. And we can rebuild the economy a lot quicker and a lot faster than ever before. Now this emergency UBI bill, this emergency universal basic income bill, is going to cost the taxpayers $2 trillion over 6 to 12 months. But again, it's a small price it's a small price to pay to prevent a Munted Shitshow and a possible collapse of the United States. Or Congress can still fuck around after Easter vacation and see what happens when you have millions of people homeless and unemployed in the next month or so. That's it. See you. If there is next month.